Before beginning the story, I'd like to say a big thank you for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading alternate history-related stories every single day. If that sounds good, be sure to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a whole lot when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. My grandfather passed away 3 months ago. Earl Sheridan, 91 years old, died quietly in his sleep in the same house he'd lived in for 60 years. A good death, people said. Peaceful, the kind of ending we all hope for after a long life. I'm Boyd Sheridan. I'm 37, and I work as an electrician here in Huntsville, Alabama. Same city my grandfather moved to in 1962, part of the wave of engineers and technicians drawn by the space program. He worked at Marshall Space Flight Center for 30 years, one of thousands who made the Apollo missions possible. He never talked about his work. When I was a kid, I asked him about the moon landings all the time. What was it like? Were you there when they launched? Did you ever meet the astronauts? He'd give vague answers, change the subject, sometimes just leave the room. My father said Earl had always been that way. Some men just didn't like to talk about their jobs. I accepted it, stopped asking. After the funeral, I inherited boxes of his personal effects. Photographs, letters, mementos of a long life. Most of it was ordinary, the accumulated artifacts of 9 decades of existence. But hidden in a lockbox at the back of his closet was a journal, my grandfather's private record of what really happened during the Apollo program, what the astronauts found on the moon, why we never went back after Apollo 17, and what's been slowly approaching Earth ever since. The moon landing was successful. That's the problem. We should never have gone there. We should never have let them know we existed. Earl Sheridan was a quiet man, hard-working, devoted to family, the kind of person who showed love through actions rather than words. He'd raised my father in this house, helped raise me when my parents needed support, never complained about anything in his life. He moved to Huntsville in 1962, when the city was transforming from a cotton town into the center of America's space ambitions. NASA was hiring thousands of people, and Earl had the technical skills they needed. He worked on communication systems, the equipment that kept mission control connected to the astronauts. He never rose to prominence, never had his name in history books, never appeared in documentaries about the space race, just one of the thousands of anonymous technicians who made Apollo possible. The silence about his work always seemed strange to me, but I learned not to push. Some people compartmentalize their professional and personal lives. Some experiences are too intense to revisit casually. I figured Earl had his reasons. At his funeral, I met some of his former colleagues, old men in their 80s and 90s, the last survivors of the Apollo generation. They spoke about my grandfather with respect, with genuine affection. They told stories I'd never heard, memories of long nights and impossible deadlines and the shared purpose that had driven them all. But there was something else in their voices too, a heaviness I couldn't identify. One of them, a man named Chester Rawlings, pulled me aside after the service. He asked if Earl had left any papers, any documents, anything related to his work. When I mentioned the lockbox I'd found but hadn't yet opened, Chester went pale. He told me to read what was inside, then to burn it, and never speak of it to anyone. He walked away before I could ask any questions. I didn't burn it. I read it instead. The journal began in 1968. Earl had been assigned to communication systems for the Apollo program, working on the equipment that would relay signals between Earth and the lunar missions. The early entries were technical, mundane. Notes about equipment specifications, testing procedures, the excitement of working toward Kennedy's deadline. The tone changed after Apollo 11, July 1969. The successful moon landing. Armstrong and Aldrin walking on the surface while Collins orbited above. The whole world watching. The culmination of years of work, billions of dollars, the efforts of hundreds of thousands of people. Earl's entries became shorter after that, more cryptic. References to anomalous readings during the mission that weren't in the official reports. Mentions of classified briefings he wasn't supposed to know about. A growing unease that something wasn't right. He had pieced together what really happened from conversations with colleagues, from glimpses of classified documents, from the changed demeanor of people who had direct access to mission data. The astronauts hadn't just found rocks and dust. They had found evidence, structures beneath the lunar surface, visible in certain photographs that were never released to the public. Geometric patterns in the regolith that couldn't be natural formations. Shadows that fell wrong, suggesting shapes buried just below the ground. And signals. Faint electromagnetic transmissions emanating from something deep within the moon. Something that had been there for a very long time. Something that had been waiting. The discovery was immediately classified at the highest levels. The astronauts were debriefed for weeks, sworn to secrecy under threats that went beyond losing their careers. The photographs showing the anomalies were altered or destroyed. The signal data was locked away in facilities that didn't officially exist. The official narrative was carefully constructed. We went. We collected rocks. We planted a flag. We came home triumphant. No mention of what was really found. No hint that the moon was anything other than a dead, empty world. Earl's journal documented what he learned over the following years, as each subsequent Apollo mission carried classified secondary objectives. Apollo 12 through 17 weren't just scientific expeditions. They were investigations. Each mission explored different regions of the moon, mapping the extent of the anomalies, trying to understand what the astronauts had stumbled onto. The structures extended across multiple landing sites, ancient, impossibly ancient. Analysis of the surrounding material suggested they predated any life on Earth by hundreds of millions of years, maybe longer. They weren't built by anything human. They weren't built by anything from our solar system. The prevailing theory among the classified research teams was that something had used the moon as an outpost, a monitoring station, watching the Earth, perhaps, or watching the entire inner solar system. And when that something left, it had left equipment behind, equipment that was still functioning, still waiting. The signals were the most troubling discovery. They had been dormant for eons, silent, broadcasting nothing but a faint carrier wave, like a telephone line waiting for someone to pick up, until Apollo 11 landed. The impact of human presence changed something. The vibrations of the lunar module touching down, the radio transmissions between the astronauts and Earth, the simple fact of intelligent life arriving on the moon's surface. Something woke up. The signals changed after we arrived, became stronger, more complex, patterned in ways that suggested information rather than noise, and they began transmitting outward, not randomly, not in all directions, directionally, aimed at something far beyond the solar system. Earl's journal described the growing horror among the scientists who understood what they were seeing. By Apollo 17, the last crewed mission to the moon, they had reached a conclusion. The structures on the moon were some kind of beacon, a monitoring station designed to detect when intelligent life in this solar system had evolved far enough to leave its planet. And when that life arrived, the beacon activated, sent a signal to whoever had placed it there, announced that something had finally evolved far enough to be interesting. We hadn't discovered an ancient relic. We had triggered an alarm, and something, somewhere, had received it. Earl's journal explained why the Apollo program really ended. Not budget cuts, not public disinterest, not shifting political priorities. Fear. The decision makers who knew the truth understood what humanity had done. We had announced our existence to something unknown, something that had built monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, perhaps throughout the universe, something that had been waiting for signals like ours for longer than human civilization had existed. They didn't know what would happen next, didn't know if the signal's recipients would come to observe us, study us, welcome us into some galactic community, or harvest us, or destroy us, or do something so far beyond human comprehension that we couldn't even imagine it. The only strategy they could conceive was to go quiet, stop going to the moon, stop drawing attention, hope that whoever received the signal would dismiss it as a fluke, lose interest, or take so long to respond that humanity might somehow be ready when they arrived. For 50 years, we stayed away. We focused on low Earth orbit, the space station, unmanned probes to distant planets, anything that wouldn't trigger more signals from the lunar beacon, anything that wouldn't confirm that intelligent life was still active on Earth. The official explanations, the budget constraints and policy decisions were covers. The real reason was terror. Earl described a small group within NASA and other agencies, people who knew the truth, who had dedicated their lives to monitoring the moon, the signals, any indication of a response. They called themselves the Watchers. Earl had been recruited after he stumbled onto classified information in the early 1970s. He spent 30 years as part of the group, monitoring equipment, analyzing data, waiting for any sign that something was coming. The journal revealed his private torment, the weight of knowing what humanity had done, the fear of what might be approaching through the vast darkness between stars, the guilt of keeping silent while the world celebrated the moon landings as humanity's greatest achievement. He had wanted to warn people, but what good would it do? Mass panic wouldn't stop what was coming, wouldn't change the signal that was already transmitted, wouldn't protect anyone from whatever might arrive. Only quiet, only patience, only hope that the universe was large enough and time was long enough, that the response might never come. The journal continued through the decades. Earl kept monitoring, kept recording, even after he officially retired from NASA in 1992. The Watchers maintained their vigil, passing knowledge to new generations, watching the skies for any sign of change. In 2019, something changed. The signals from the moon shifted. After 50 years of steady transmission, they suddenly intensified, became more complex, more urgent, as if something was responding to them, not from Earth, from somewhere far away. Earl's final entries were written in shaky handwriting, the penmanship of a man whose body was failing even as his mind remained sharp. He described what the watchers had detected. Something was approaching the solar system, moving at speeds that shouldn't be possible by any physics humanity understood, on a trajectory that would bring it to Earth. Not immediately, not quickly by human standards. The distances involved were vast, and even at impossible speeds, crossing interstellar space took time. But inevitably, something had received the signal we triggered in 1969, had noted that intelligent life existed on the third planet of an unremarkable star, and he was coming to investigate. Based on the trajectory and speed, the watchers estimated arrival within decades, maybe a century at the outside, a long time by human standards, nothing at all by cosmic ones. The journal's last entry was dated 3 weeks before Earl's death. He wrote that he was tired of watching, tired of waiting, tired of knowing. He apologized to me for leaving this burden. But someone in the family should know the truth, he wrote, should understand what was coming and why. He asked me to forgive him for keeping silent all those years, and he asked me to be brave. Whatever was coming, humanity would face it. Maybe we would survive. Maybe we wouldn't. But we had reached for the stars, and that meant something, even if it also meant the end. After reading the journal, I couldn't let it go. I needed to know if my grandfather had been telling the truth, or if this was the delusion of an old man, his mind creating elaborate fictions to give meaning to a lifetime of ordinary work. I tracked down Chester Rawlings, the man from the funeral who had told me to burn the journal. Found him in a nursing home outside Huntsville, frail, 93 years old, but lucid, sharp eyes that studied me as I sat down across from him. I told him I'd read the journal. He closed his eyes for a long moment. Then he confirmed everything: the structures, the signals, the beacon, the response. He had been a watcher too, one of the last surviving members of the original group. He told me that monitoring continued. New generations had taken over, working in secret within various agencies, tracking the approach of whatever was coming. The object, if that's what it was, remained decades away, but it had changed course twice since detection, adjusted its trajectory with precision that proved it wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was guided, it was intelligent, and it knew exactly where it was going. I asked Chester about the current push to return to the moon. Artemis, the Chinese missions, the renewed international interest in establishing a lunar presence. His face darkened. He said the watchers had tried to stop it, had argued within the agencies that returning to the moon would trigger more signals from the beacon, would confirm that intelligent life was still active on Earth, would accelerate whatever was approaching. But they had lost that argument. New generations of decision-makers didn't believe the old warnings, or didn't care, or thought that humanity had advanced enough to handle whatever arrived, or had simply decided that hiding was pointless. that whatever was coming would find us eventually, whether we hid or not. Chester said the approaching object had accelerated since the announcement of new lunar programs, changed course again more directly toward Earth, as if it had received confirmation of its target, as if our renewed interest in the moon had told it everything it needed to know. I returned home with the weight of the truth, went back to my normal life, my work, my family, the ordinary routines that make up an ordinary existence. But nothing felt normal anymore. Every time I look at the moon now, I think about the beacon, about the signal that's been transmitting for over 50 years, about what's approaching from the darkness between stars. I notice things I never paid attention to before. News stories about unexplained signals detected by radio telescopes. Articles about the accelerating pace of space programs worldwide. The strange urgency driving every nation to establish a lunar presence, as if something is pushing humanity back to the moon, or as if the powers who know the truth have given up on silence and decided to meet whatever's coming. I don't know what to do with what I've learned. I can't warn people. They'd think I was insane. I can't stop what's coming. It's already on its way. I can only live with the knowledge and wonder how much time humanity has left. My grandfather carried this burden for 50 years. Now it belongs to me. The knowledge of what we did in 1969, what we triggered when we landed on the moon, what's been approaching ever since. The successful moon landing, the greatest achievement in human history, might also be what ends us. I look at the moon sometimes, can't help it. It hangs there in the sky, beautiful and silent, the same moon that humanity has gazed at since we first developed the capacity to wonder. But I see it differently now. Not a symbol of human achievement, a trap we walked into, a tripwire we didn't know was there. The beacon is still transmitting, still announcing our presence to whatever's listening, still confirming that the intelligent life that triggered the alarm is still here, still active, still worth visiting, and the response is still approaching, getting closer every day, still decades away, maybe, but inevitable now, unstoppable. We keep going back to the moon. Every new mission, every new landing, every new footprint in the lunar dust. We keep telling whatever's coming that we're here. Keep confirming that we're worth the visit. I don't know if that's courage or foolishness. Maybe the decision makers have accepted that hiding is pointless, or maybe they believe humanity can handle whatever arrives, or maybe they just don't believe the warnings at all. New generations looking at old fears and deciding they're relics of a more paranoid time. I hope they're right. I hope whatever's coming is benevolent, curious, willing to share knowledge and welcome us into some cosmic community. But my grandfather didn't think so. The fear in his journal was real. The dread that accumulated over 50 years of watching and waiting. He believed something terrible was approaching, and he died without ever knowing if he was right. I'm sharing this because my grandfather kept the secret for 50 years, and it destroyed him slowly. The weight of it, the isolation, the guilt of knowing something terrible and being unable to tell anyone. I don't want to carry it alone. Someone else should know, should understand why we stopped going to the moon for so long, should understand why our return might be a mistake. should understand what's out there, approaching through the darkness, drawn by a signal we sent when we thought we were just exploring. The moon landing was successful. That's the problem. We reached out into the universe and something noticed. Something ancient, something patient, something vast beyond our comprehension. It built beacons throughout the galaxy, throughout the universe maybe, monitoring stations on moons and asteroids and dead worlds, waiting for life to evolve, to grow, to develop the capability to leave its planet. And when that life triggered a beacon, it knew exactly where to find us, knew that something interesting had finally developed, worth visiting, worth investigating, worth whatever it does to civilizations that ring the alarm. I don't know what's coming. Neither did my grandfather. Neither do the watchers who've spent decades monitoring its approach. It could be wonderful. Could be the beginning of a new era for humanity. First contact with an intelligence that has traveled between stars, that has built machines lasting millions of years, that has knowledge we can't imagine. Or it could be the end, the harvest, the culling of a species that made the mistake of reaching too far, too fast, before it was ready to face what waited in the dark. Either way, it's coming, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. Nothing we can do but wait and watch the moon, and remember that our greatest triumph might be what destroys us. The moon is rising outside my window. Beautiful tonight. Clear sky, bright surface, the same sight that inspired poets and dreamers for all of human history. I used to love looking at it. Now I just see the beacon, the alarm we triggered, the signal still transmitting, the response still approaching. My grandfather watched that moon for 50 years, carrying the weight of what he knew. Now I carry it, and someday my children might carry it too. Or they'll be among the last generation, the ones who find out what happens when you successfully reach for the stars, when you prove you're intelligent enough to leave your world, when you announce yourself to whatever's listening. The moon landing was humanity's greatest achievement, and it might be what ends us. I hope I'm wrong. I hope my grandfather was wrong. But something is coming, something we invited without knowing, something we can't stop. And all we can do now is wait and watch and wonder what happens next.